Good morning and happy Halloween. We're just starting off and we are talking about personalizing learning with Canvas MasteryPaths. My name is Max Gertz. I'm a learning consultant with Canvas. I have worked in the trenches as a teacher once upon a time, and then as an instructional coach with a research university down here in Atlanta. I am filling in for Deshira, so she will be back as scheduled going forward, I'm sure. But just for today, if you do need anything, I will make my email available if you're wondering anything about today's session. If you're wondering anything during the session, just pop it in the chat. I will make sure to answer all of them in as timely a manner as possible. But right now, we're just going to get rolling with personalizing learning with MasteryPaths. So we are talking about personalized learning and MasteryPaths sort of as a combo. And what I really do like about this session is that it deals with student choice and voice. We'll talk a little bit about what personalized learning is. If you're familiar with it, definitely love to hear your input on that. We'll talk about why to use personalized learning and sort of how to use it as a lens to look at a way to use Canvas. Then we're going to work all the way through MasteryPaths. And we're going to talk about MasteryPaths as an opportunity to utilize that lens, that pedagogical lens of personalized learning. We'll roll through the slide deck for the most part, and then I will demo in my instance sort of how you can do it. You can follow along, ask any questions that you have. For those of us joining us now, you've not missed anything. We're just getting through the agenda. My name is Max. If you have any questions, wondering anything during the entire presentation, please just go ahead, pop it in the chat. I will do my best to get to everything that I can. So that's sort of a rundown of what we're going to do for the next hour or so. And we continue on. Personalized learning is really just an educational approach, pedagogical lens that really aims to customize learning for students. Again, it's really pulling out the choice and voice for students, so they're not just kind of going through some rote content that we have curated for all of them. It's an opportunity to really give them a way to choose their own adventure, sort of, especially with MasteryPaths, and really endorse their voice to increase engagement. And that's really the goal. We just want students to be hyper engaged, especially if we're doing anything online. It's really about meeting students where they are and then taking them to where we want them to go. MasteryPaths is one of the more advanced features in Canvas, but once you get a hold of it, and I'll give a couple examples of a school I worked with that was really awesome, it can be a game changer for students. It can be kind of a set it and forget it, where students are then able to matriculate their way through your course with exact content that you want them to see based on their performance levels. So when you think of personalized learning and you may not have seen anything beyond this, what comes to mind? And you can join at that slido.com with that particular number. If you want to just pop it in the chat, because that's easier, feel free. But what do you think of when you hear personalized learning? And it might not be a good thing. I'm totally open to that. Options, competency-based, absolutely. Love that, love those responses. And we will definitely talk about competency and mastery. Choices, perfect. Wait, we got one more coming in. Got a few more coming in, so we'll wait on those. But what I'm seeing is exactly right. We will definitely discuss competency and a couple of different ways that MasteryPaths can help with that. Diversity and learning styles. I really like that. That's a really great opportunity. Extra work for the instructor. That's what I wanted to see. That's perfect. It's not going to be extra work for you. It is kind of think of it as a swapping of roles. And that's the way that I really, I've always presented it. Some of the work that I've done with personalized learning, teachers and instructors and facilitators always come back and say, it's going to be more work for us. It's more work on the front end. It's less work on the back end. So setting this up at the beginning is going to really lighten that load at the towards the end. I love career matching. That's perfect. Changes trajectory of materials. That's fantastic. Yes. So it is going to be sort of that push-pull of where do you want to kind of put the work in, but once it's mapped out, it takes care of all that back end concern about now I need to remediate for one student or accelerate for another student. And it's something, especially in Canvas, which is why I was a huge proponent and I used it. And I really tried to get our instructors to use it appropriately. It's one of those things that you can just build on and it'll live there forever. So thank you. That was awesome. Why are we going to do personalized learning? It's a good question. And I think that these answers will really help sort of drive your thoughts about it, but definitely improving performance. And I saw that on the last slide. A lot more engagement from students. We're really looking to keep them engaged, especially with that online portion of the content. So this is one way, and it does, in a sense, gamify it a little bit for students, because now they're able to see how their performance on particular tasks is going to influence the content that they're interacting with next. Ownership, again, they are taking ownership of their learning path, and you're kind of laying it out for them to play it out. That's kind of my favorite thing to talk about with MasteryPaths. It's 100% data-driven, so we're really focusing on learner performance to direct the next engagement for them. And then we're talking about motivation. Again, there is a level of gamification with it. I know as we talk about standardized tests more and more, there are really adaptive tests where when you get questions wrong, they go up and down, or they get them right, they go up. But this is a really positive way to drive student engagement. We're not now asking learners to try and figure something out that may be over their heads, and we're not sort of reducing the level of knowledge and content. We're doing our best to meet learners where they are. And we can do that in a variety of ways. So having gone through your options, the same Slido link should offer you what sounds best about it. So hopefully we're working towards changing some minds. Good morning and happy Halloween. Welcome in. We are just working our way through personalizing learning with MasteryPaths. So you're just sort of ranking these options. Improved performance, 100% agree. That's super important. Awesome. Increased engagement coming in at number 2 right now. Increased engagement moving up. Still got a couple people coming in, haven't missed a whole lot yet. We are just talking about some of the best pieces of personalized learning right now. If you are wondering anything, where's Deshira? Max, you can go ahead, put that in the chat. Anything that you are wondering, where are we with personalized learning? We have a couple of answers in right now, and that's awesome. I love to see increased engagement. As an educator, that's number 1 for me. I'll be honest, data-driven instruction is my probably least favorite terms to talk about in the classroom, but I know it is important. It's just one of those things that as we do it, that gets to me to be a lot harder in terms of that increased facilitator work. Ownership, perfect. So I think that you guys have a great handle on what the benefits are. So we are going to go right in and talking about MasteryPaths. And if you are wondering, wait, how does this tie? I am happy to go back through it and sort of explain the pedagogical implications of it. But MasteryPaths is, again, an advanced tool within Canvas, and you should all have it available to you. It's going to stem from your quizzes, new or classic, and I'll show you the difference between those two as we go in. But it's going to set up your lessons or your units or your modes of learning to best suit the students and their performance. And you can also mold this into a choice topic. I'll talk about that a little bit more towards the end. But as we talk about mastery paths, it's really important to think about pre-planning. And the reason it's important to think about pre-planning is that it does sort of require you to have all of your ducks in a row before you start laying everything out. Now, does that mean that it has to be a completed module, a completed unit? Absolutely not. Here is an example of a module. This is just a screenshot. Again, I will take you into my instance and sort of show you what it looks like and how to build them. But this is the entire unit of learning, and this is just an ELA sort of example, where you can see the grammar pre-assessment is going to come first, and then you have a bunch of pages and quizzes after it. The pre-assessment is going to be what determines what comes next within that mastery path, and it's going to be set up from that quiz. So as you're creating your modules, and then this is going to begin with that pre-assessment, and it can be a choice as well. Again, I'll show you that later. You're going to tie them all to mastery paths. If something isn't tied to a mastery paths, and I'll get in a little bit more as I'm demoing, you may see an assignment that you can see without completing that first initial assignment. Now, if that's some content that you want students to see, that's absolutely a valid way to set up your content. You're going to go ahead, create your module. You're going to have all of your content loaded up there. That's going to be meant for all of your students. And that first activity, again, that grammar pre-assessment, that's going to determine where the students get driven to next, essentially. So you're not necessarily responsible for saying, oh, you should go to choice 1.01 or choice 2.01 based on what your students do understand. So again, we're going to go through these slides and I'll sort of explain it, and then I'll drive you through it, and hopefully you'll get a better understanding for what mastery paths look like. So first, there is the pages portion. And what is really important is make sure that you allow in mastery paths. If a page, this is specific to pages, is not allowed in mastery paths, then you are not going to be able to assign a page to mastery paths. So that's something that as you're going through, checking all the boxes, and you don't see something show up within a mastery path, you're really going to want to make sure that if it's a page, if it's content, then you are making sure that that box is checked off. Again, very easy to find. I'll make sure we go through it again as we build a mastery path. Similarly, you are going to want to have all assignments or quizzes assigned to mastery paths. Again, as you start to build out your Canvas materials, it's going to say that it is assigned to everybody. I'll show you where we change that, how to change it, what it looks like. It's going to prompt with a couple of questions. Are you sure you want to do this? But yes, you want to make sure that you assign it to mastery paths. So here is where your mastery path sort of conceptual building can start. Now, within mastery paths, there are 3 point ranges, and you can adjust those point ranges as much as you want or as little as you want. The default setting for mastery paths is going to be your 70 or 80 to 100% are going to go in the high end, if you will. You'll have a middle range and a low range. You can copy mastery path content from one range to another if you'd like. It doesn't necessarily have to be 3. It can make it 2, and I'll show you that within the choice option for mastery paths. But that's the way that it is set up. And it's set up so whatever a learner scores in a particular, it can be either a pre-assessment, it can be a choice board, whatever they score, they're only going to see that specific content. I'll show you the implications in the grade book, but it does mean that those assignments that students aren't assigned are going to be grayed out. So they're not going to count towards their final grade. I know that's something that a lot of students and learners are more concerned with than maybe we want them to be at this point. But that is sort of the way that it looks. I'm going to go back a couple of slides and you'll see again, there are 7 different assignments here, or 7 different content pieces and quizzes. So they have been divided into 3 different buckets. And again, this is conceptualizing sort of how you want your mastery paths to play out. If you have a longer unit, and you know that some students don't necessarily do as well on some content, it's really sort of your high flyers. If you have those middle ground students, you just want everybody to get all that same content. This is an opportunity to sort of utilize this. So as you can see, the grammar pre-assessment is out of 50 points. So from 35 to 50, students will only see a page, which is going to be writing and peer support, and then they will get an assignment, grammar and literature concepts. Again, these concepts are going to tie back to that grammar pre-assessment. We also want to make sure that our concepts that we are assessing ultimately align with the things that we want students to be learning. The middle point range, you still see the same, you see a different page. What does your writing process look like versus writing communities and peer support? So we see that difference immediately. So those students who score in the middle aren't going to see that. There is a different assignment as well, grammar paragraph, and the quiz is also going to be grammar and editing, which is different. So everything that the students who score in the high range receive is different from what they score in the middle range and at the lower range. As you can see, the lower range, we have grammar with Einstein. It's a different page from the 3, and you can assign multiple pages. This is just an example. Writing experience responses, again, that assignment is going to be different. Now we have the same one, assign grammar, paragraph writing, and language review. And we have a different quiz at the end, usage and similar spelling. So there's an example of one item in these mastery paths that is the same, whereas everything else is personalized for each particular kind of band of student. So I hope I haven't lost you yet. It does take a little bit to set up and consider. And I will show you sort of how all of this looks in a more user-friendly format, I hope. But continuing on, this is what a mastery path looks like. And you can see that that grammar pre-assessment is at the top. Then in that, this is either in quizzes or new quiz, classic or new quizzes, excuse me. You can see that it's next to your questions. It's going to be mastery paths right there. And in the new quizzes, it just says details and mastery paths. There is a difference sort of between the two, and I'm going to get to those later on. Something to take note of and click around with, you can have some fun with it, is this and. Students can have choices within mastery paths. So you're not completely removing choice if you're sending students down a path. If you click on this ampersand, and again, I'll show you the different views, when a student gets to that particular place in the module, they're going to see student choice, assignment 1, assignment 2, or quiz 1, assignment 1. It's up to you how you want to sort of do it. But this is part of really conceptualizing, and I'd really encourage you to play around with this. It's one of the more interesting and advanced things that Canvas has implemented in the last year or so. It's probably one of my favorite things to do with students and really see that how they want to, like we were talking about, diversify learning styles. Student knows they're going to do better on a written piece than a quiz. Then this is that opportunity to let them show you what they want to do. So that and or is going to be a really important sort of filling place. So I'm going to exit out, and I am going to drop a Jamboard into the chat. If you have some ideas, I'd love to hear them. or see them. What are some ways that you think you could use MasteryPaths? And if you haven't used Jamboards before, I feel like you have, but you can just click on a sticky note and save it in whatever color you want. But what are some ways do you think you could use them? Are you still feeling a little trepidation around MasteryPaths? Oh, access denied. My apologies. I will try it again.
That worked.
Perfect, thank you. And if you have ideas that you would like to come back to, I will make sure that Deshira has this Jamboard as well. She'll send that out and you guys will have access to it. Somebody's practicing with the drawing tool. Love it. I'll move some of these. Mastery learning, grading, universal. Perfect. I love it. You tied it back to some other ideas. That's awesome. Perfect. Yeah. I'm seeing that one path versus another. We were working with St. Louis University in their nursing program. They set up MasteryPaths for their nursing program where they had pediatric nurses and other nurses. I am woefully under knowledged about how nursing programs work. But when nurses chose one particular path of learning, they were all in the same course, but they would have their entire course was predicated on that one question in mastery with a MasteryPath. So they would get all the pediatric specific content. Different novel studies, love it. That's perfect. Assessing writing, yeah, that's a great way to do it, and really making sure we can remediate and go from there. Those are all some really great ideas. I really love to see how you guys are already thinking about MasteryPaths. Welcome. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull up my instance of Canvas, and I'm going to show you sort of what my MasteryPaths. I just have two set up in this one course. I'm going to show you how I've built them. I'm going to show you some different options, and I will also show you from the student view as to what that looks like. So if I go in, my student view has been completed, but this plot content page for all I've intentionally left. And as I have students coming in, I have not checked off my allow in MasteryPaths button. What that's going to do is it's going to tell students that they have to view it. I always love this add to student to do, just as an aside. It does make this pop up on students to-do lists. So if there's an announcement or something that you want them to do before they kind of move on to the next thing, that add to student to do is really good. We can talk about this if you want, but allow in MasteryPaths is that toggle on and off to ensure that a page is allowed in MasteryPaths. So as I go back to my modules and I look in my pre-assessment, this is a new quiz. So what's notable about that is going to be the metrics that I can see after students interact with this new quiz. The other thing in new quizzes that you can do that you can't do in classic quizzes is change the point value without changing them in the actual assignment. So there's actually 10 points that are available and it's 100%. There are 10 points that are available within this MasteryPath, but in the gradebook, it's going to show up as 0. And there's a really easy way to get around that if we want to use regular ones, if we want to use classic quizzes and they show up in the gradebook. So as you can see, students who score 10 points only have to do the plot review assignment. Students who score between 40 and 70 have to do the plot mountain review and the plot review. Students who score the least are going to, students who score under 40 are going to have to do all three. And so that is essentially all that we're doing. I've added each of those to my mastery path, and I will show you what that looks like. I apologize, I live in Georgia. I am not a UGA fan, but I like college football, so I keep all my mascots there as my students. And you can see for the student what this looks like. This student scored plot pre-assessment, choose your path. They scored 0 here. Because they scored 0, you can see that they have all three assignments that show up. And they have also chosen path number 2. I will show you how to get there in a minute. So again, how do we get to Mastery Paths? Very simple. We click on it. And if I wanted to add anything, I could go ahead and add it here. You can see that 0.0 page is not showing as available to add to the Mastery Path because I did not allow it in Mastery Paths. You can see, however, and this is where really mapping out all of these concepts is important. You can see these are all in module 2. So as you're building out your mastery paths and really kind of considering what needs to go where, really consider these students are going to need to get X, Y, or Z done first before they're going to move on to the next portion. You can also filter. If I wanted to filter for quizzes, I knew they have a particular quiz. I can also search. It's not going to find anything in quizzes. It should find that there. So again, the search feature in Canvas is always really helpful. And if you've numbered and named all of your assignments in a particular way, it's going to help you find them a little bit more simply and easily. Again, I'll go into pages and just demonstrate not seeing that 0.0 assignment. Is anybody wondering anything, or is this all making sense? I hope.
I have a question. Why is it that we have to specifically choose that a page be allowed in a mastery? Why couldn't you just choose from all pages? Just as a question. There's often an issue in Canvas with kind of the hidden checkbox, and for a lot of different functions. So I was just wondering why that is.
That's a good question. I will take it back to my team and I'll take it back to the development team.
Okay.
I don't have anything to do with it. I think it's a totally valid question. My only thought around it is you're ensuring that you're being really intentional about what students can and can't see if they're in a particular, if you're sort of utilizing mastery paths. I agree. It's an extra step that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But I'll show you kind of the other side of it, because it does tie in with where you assign things as well, with assignments and quizzes. And I'm about to go there now. So hopefully it helps answer your question, but if it doesn't, I will definitely take that back.
Yep, thank you.
So as appropriately predicated, we're going to go into assignment, and this is an assignment with a rubric and all that good stuff. But if we edit it, we scroll down, it is usually assigned to, everyone. Everyone is your default setting. And it's going to say everyone else because I've already assigned it to mastery paths. So I can create a new one, but you do need to, was that assigned to slide. And we've seen that it is specifically assigned to Uga because he did not score because it had to be after he completed his mastery path assignment. But in your new assignment, and I'll just create one so we can see that, that's what it shows you. If I added a new assignment, and I went to edit it, assign to everyone is not going to be available in your mastery path. So that's sort of the flip side of the pages. And it's really simple. We just hit the X and assign to MasteryPaths, and then we'd be able to save it and see it. I hope that helps with some sort of explanation. But I get that it would be frustrating, and that hidden checkbox is a point well taken to me. I've missed a bunch of them. And when building this out, I got really frustrated with the fact that I kept seeing a page as a student, and I realized I hadn't been checking that box off, but all students will see it versus just in MasteryPaths will see it. That's sort of what the toggle on and off does, if that makes sense. So that is your that's your MasteryPaths. And here you don't see a whole lot. I'm going to be honest, new quizzes aren't the best for MasteryPaths currently. You don't see sort of the metrics that you see with classic quizzes, which is sort of why I like classic quizzes, which are not going away. And we're excited. Awesome. So the other option that I've spoken to a little bit is the choose your path. And this is a 1 or 2 binary choice. As we click into this one, this is a classic quiz. So I'm going to click up here and I have to edit and then go to MasteryPaths. And as you can see, choice number 1 and my 2.1 choice assignment. I forgot to demonstrate one thing, but I will. Or 2.02 choice 2 knowledge check. So these two are going to send students to the same place. Like I alluded to, and this is in the slide deck a little bit later on, you see your MasteryPaths breakdown. And what's really cool is you can click on it and see what they've done, and you can see their submissions directly to it. So you can see that Dog got a 1 out of 1. And so that means he is going to choice 1. The test student isn't going to let me click into it. No, it's just not working for me. Great. You can see the test student scored that 0 to 4, and these would be the same set of students. So they would be receiving actually the same assignments. And again, I'm going to take you into that student view. So you can see here that the difference in that page, this is a page that I want everybody to see. They haven't taken the plot pre-assessment. You can see it's also out of 0 points. And it's locked until they actually click in and take that assessment. You can see down here, choice number 1 and choice number 2 are open, which shouldn't be the case. So that's sort of the difference. The one thing I did want you to see, we're just going to change this to an or. So it's going to have you do these 2 things or this one thing. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to log in as UGA. I might have had to save it and I didn't save it. Yeah, it's not popping up properly. What it should show you is student option 1 and 2, and I will go back at the end of this and sort of send you. I will add these screenshots to the slide deck. But what it will show you is that students have a choice to complete these 2 things. It'll say student choice or this one thing. That's what I was attempting to show you. and I might be able to do it, but I do not want to go in as the test student and take the whole test and then show it to you that way. But now that I've changed it again, we were doing that, these two or, and I'll just send those in a screenshot after in that slide deck, because that'll probably be the easiest way and a way that will not waste your time in watching me take a test. The issue and a concern that comes up quite a bit is, what about the grades? What do they look like for students? As you can see, this test student hasn't taken that first assessment. It's set as a 0, but it will not count towards a grade. Again, this is a new quiz. And then you have your choose your path, which is an old quiz. The really quick way to do it, and again, it's out of 1. So I always like to sort of do this, but I can set a default grade as a 1. I can set that default grade. I don't know why it's not changing it. That's great. You can change it that way. You should be able to delete it, but it's because I just assigned it. Okay, because I just completed it. Overwrite already entered grades. 2 scores updated. So you could, in theory, update every student who's doing that choice board or doing that choice option entirely down the line. So you don't have to go in and click through and click down and click through and click 1 and down. You can do it that way pretty simply. So as I click back, there is one more way to personalize this learning. And that is to utilize the adaptive release feature. If you wanted to ensure that students were getting up to a particular standard, you can always add requirements. And this is a really great way of ensuring that students are either viewing a page, getting things done to the level at which you want them to succeed. So you can add as many requirements as you want through a module. You can also add them to individual to a module. So they need to complete one module before they move on to the next. That also grays out that module for them. So if they were to enter your course and you had unit 2 and you really needed them to do the specific things in unit 1 before they got to unit 2, then that's an option. But again, that's just going up to the 3 dots or the skinny snowman and clicking edit. There are a couple of different options. You can have a student mark a page as done. So that's a really easy way just to, and it does this in a roundabout way. Students have to say that they've read it, essentially, if that's a content page. If we were going to a quiz, they might just have to submit the assignment, and that's often a good option just in terms of grading time. It's a good option for students turning things in and allowing you as the facilitator the appropriate amount of time to return it. They just have to submit it. Or you can set it to score at least. Score at least is going to give you this option of out of. Right now it's out of 10. If we wanted them to have to score a 70 before they moved on, then you could put that in there as a module requirement. The really tricky thing about this is you may have to go back and moderate and add attempts for students, especially on quizzes, if they do not receive a grade high enough. So if everybody started off with 2 attempts on that quiz, the student took, the quiz twice and did not score a 7, then they would have to reach out to the facilitator, teacher, instructor, that they needed to retake that quiz. You need to reset it. So this is where I would just be really mindful of it as a requirement of scoring a particular score. You can also check this box off. Students must move through the requirements in sequential order. In terms of personalized learning, what I really like is that this does not have to be on. because students can view all of the content and complete all of the quizzes and or assignments within a module that have to do with that content. One of the really important things to consider in terms of student choice and voice is that students can choose that I have 5 minutes. I know I have time to view a page, versus I have 15 minutes. I have time to take a quiz, versus I have 30 minutes to an hour that I've scheduled off for myself. I can actually start to work on my assignment as I need to work on it. And I know I can come back to it. So that's something just to be mindful of. And you can also just say students must complete one of these assignments. That option is really going to kind of narrow their opportunity and what they're going to work on. But those are your options there. I will also show you, if I wanted to hit edit, I can add a prerequisite, and I can make sure that they need to finish plot and structure before they move to that second module. So that adds, excuse me, sequentiality, that adds that sequencing for specific modules within Canvas. So that's just another way to sort of consider how your course is going to run and how your course is really going to be plotted out. And again, really thinking about that. But once I have my prerequisites, I can add a requirement. I need them to submit this particular assignment. I'm just going to update the module, and you'll see it says, because I already have students who are in this module, what do I want to do with it? I would want to relock it. And it means that they have to now complete all items. That's going to show up if you have enabled that adaptive release. So the last thing that has to do with mastery paths and personalization, we can see here there's these different point values, and it says multiple, or this in this case, it says 0 to 40. This is indicating what choices are available and what items show depending on the score that students receive. So for this one, you can see that it's only from 0.7 to 1 point are students going to see choice number 1. Up here, you have 0 to 40 points, and that's the only way that students are going to see that particular option. Now, again, it does show multiple for the other ones, just indicating that if students score, they might score 0 to 40, they might score 0 to 70, both options will appear. And that's when you can go back. And again, MasteryPaths is really easy to go check. Click back in, and you can see that these are both options for that 0 to 40 and then 40 to 70 there. Again, these are entirely changeable, entirely customizable, up to you as to what you want to determine mastery of particular content to look like.
So Max, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Where I continue on, I want to make sure that all of this makes sense. No questions. Perfect.
Yes, question.
Max, can you hear Janelle?
Yep, I'll wait.
Okay, I'm here.
You're on
I have a question. In terms of the gradebook, am I assuming that at the end some kind of percentages are being calculated, since some students might be out of 800 points, some might be out of 900 points? How does that factor in at the end of the term?
So are you talking about just in terms of which which
Yeah, either I have to be
content
really careful about how I assign different points depending on who's going down what path. It seems to me that it's impossible to make this, okay, this course is out of 1,000 points, or that would be really hard for me to plan. I mean, a percentage based. What have you used in your grade book? How have you set that up to make this less amount of work?
So I've not anything where students have choice. It just needs to sort of, it doesn't need to, but it's going to vary points. I completely understand what you're saying, but option 1 out of 100, option 2 out of 100. That's part of that planning process that you might want to be mindful of, but I completely understand that frustration. And I am happy to take that back and make sure that I'm not miscommunicating anything. In terms of the grades, you can see there's really nothing that has any point that has any point values here. In terms of choosing and ensuring that the course is out of the same number of points, I would really just, my thought is to be mindful about that. That's a great point. You can weight the categories. So certain ones are worth more. It depends a little bit on, I'm not familiar with your institution's grading policies, so I don't want to say, you know, you can grade them, weight them differently, because that's not something obviously that I have control over. It would not be out of points, but it would calculate the percentage the same. So there is that same 100% percentage. I understand the concern. If a student's doing a course that only has 800 points versus another student working their way and it has 1,000 points, then there's a bit of a discrepancy in that opportunity for students to earn points or learners to earn points. So I can definitely, I will take that back and make sure that I'm not misrepresenting anything. All right. All right. I'm just making sure as I was reading through the comments, but we look pretty good. So there's a couple more slides that I'll take you through. If you are wondering anything else, please pop them in the chat. Again, I will get back to you about that now. So again, this is your teacher view. This is really just a review of what we've gone over. MasteryPaths, there are some more options. There are some more examples here. You see, this is solely from 0 to 20. This is from 20 to 35, and this is from 35 to 50 points, what students will see. Grammar paragraph, just like we showed, there are multiple opportunities for students to see this. And then again, they are redivided below. Again, your student view, just like we saw in production. You can see that grammar and pre-assessment locked just like we saw. Similarly, what you see at 50 to 35 points, and this is a little bit more set up, 20 to 34 points, 0 to 19 points. That's what you would see based on that grammar pre-assessment. Again, just like we saw in the classic quizzes view, you do have this MasteryPaths breakdown, which I really do appreciate. It's also going to get in a little bit more depth about what students turn in if they achieved a certain grade. So if your student that got a 7 to 10 points, what then have they submitted? What have they turned in? So you can really sort of grade from there as a dashboard in classic quizzes. These considerations are really best practice, best use cases. Making sure your content's in the same module. It seems like you could do in 2 different modules. That gets really messy. In one use case, a school district with whom I worked was really mindful about it. They said if you passed the content, then you didn't have to take one module, and they had all of their pre-assessments in one module. I will tell you, it got really confusing for students because they weren't sure what they had to finish first and what came next. So just being mindful about sequencing is important. Pages, again, like we talked about, and thank you for bringing that up, the check mark at the bottom. Assignments and quizzes, just make sure we're marking them off and assigning them to MasteryPaths. If using grade passback, and this is just something to consider, MasteryPaths will not pass back because they're not assigned to all students, right? So there are going to be some things that aren't assigned to students that you're going to need to take into consideration. External URLs, can't use them with MasteryPaths. Everything does have to live within Canvas and the modules. If you choose to include a page in MasteryPaths, it's only going to be accessible from that MasteryPaths point of view, just like we were talking about before. And this is kind of that trade-off. If something is available in MasteryPaths, it's not available to everybody. Something is available to if a page is available to everybody, it's not available within MasteryPaths. And you can kind of, I'll let you determine what needs to be done in terms of with your SIS, because I know that there are a number of them and different institutions use different ones. I'm going to make sure that both this recording get back to you guys and this slide deck. The reason that I want to make sure you get this slide deck, and I'll get to you in a second, Dr. Harris, this PandaPaths course, and I'll show it to you briefly if, at the end here, is an example of, it's in the Commons, and it does have this choice involved. So it's sort of a template that you can use if you're interested in it. Yes, sir, Harris.
Yeah, just Chad.
Okay.
I just, can you go back to the slide with the bullet points?
Yep.
I just wanted to confirm something.
Sure.
So it says that external tools can't be used in MasteryPaths. So if like we're using like PlayPosit for an assignment, it wouldn't work.
Unless it were embedded in a page, and I'm not totally sure about how well PlayPosit plays with Canvas.
Yeah, it's an LTI, so no LTIs. Okay.
It's not gonna, you could, I mean, you would have to do it, I would think, and could you make it an assignment?
Well, yeah, they are assigned. They're graded assignments, but they're external. They go to an external site. It's an LTI. It does go back to the grade book, but
Okay, let me double check on that. I'll include that
Okay.
and questions to get back to you. Yeah, for sure. That's easy enough to return.
That would seem like a really big selling point. Integration with those LTIs.
I have it on my list of questions. Yeah, definitely. I will make sure that information gets back to you as soon as possible. Anybody else wondering anything? Cool. So again, these are just some quick resources if you really wanted to dig a little bit deeper into the setup and how sort of the data is extracted and shown within Canvas from MasteryPaths. But that's about our time. I will happily stay on for the next 5 minutes if anybody is wondering anything or beyond. But I really do appreciate all of your thoughtful participation. That was awesome. And I look forward to hearing from anybody if you are wondering anything. I am going to leave my email in the chat. Send to everyone. If you do want me to follow up with anything in particular, or you don't get some information back, I will happily respond, get that information from you and make sure that gets that information and the answers to those questions get back to you. But again, thank you guys. I'm pretty sure Deshaira will be back next time. And if you are wondering anything, please reach out.
Thank you.
Thank you.